For many shoppers, Costco's free samples feel like one of the best perks of the membership. Walk through the warehouse on a busy afternoon and you'll see them everywhere. Small cups of soup, bite-sized snacks, tiny pieces of pizza or chicken being handed out by smiling staff. For many people, it's almost part of the Costco ritual. But have you ever wondered what's actually happening behind those free samples? Do people really buy the products after tasting them? Who pays for all that food being handed out all day long? And more importantly, why does Costco give them away in the first place? Because the truth is, those free samples are not just a nice gesture. They are part of a carefully designed system that influences how shoppers behave inside the store. From psychology and scent marketing to sales spikes and vendor payments, the business behind Costco's sample stations is far bigger than most people realize. And once you understand how it works, you may never look at those little sample cups the same way again. Today on Behind the Label, we're uncovering the 9 hidden secrets behind Costco's Free Sample Empire, a system involving marketing psychology, vendors secretly paying for your free food, and a retail strategy designed to quietly influence what ends up in your cart. Because those tiny cups of food are doing far more than feeding hungry shoppers. They're part of one of the most powerful marketing machines in modern retail. And here's the first thing most Costco shoppers never realize. Costco doesn't actually pay for most of those free samples. Let's start with the first secret. Number 1. The free samples Costco doesn't actually pay for. Most shoppers assume Costco is the one paying for those samples. After all, when you see trays of food being cooked and distributed all day long, it feels like the company is generously offering something extra to members who are paying for access to the warehouse. But the financial structure behind those sampling stations tells a completely different story. In many cases, Costco itself does not pay for the food being sampled at all. Instead, the vendors, the manufacturers who produce the products, are the ones funding the entire operation. These brands are essentially paying for a marketing opportunity. By placing their products directly in the hands of shoppers, they bypass traditional advertising and go straight to the most powerful sales tool possible: taste. According to various retail industry estimates, vendors may pay roughly $35 per sampling station per store per day just to operate inside the warehouse environment. That fee gives them the opportunity to demonstrate their product in front of thousands of Costco shoppers who walk through the store every day. Now consider how this multiplies across the network. A typical Costco location may run about 10 sampling stations on a normal day, sometimes even more during busy weekends. Multiply that by hundreds of warehouses and thousands of demonstration days throughout the year, and suddenly those little sample cups start representing millions of dollars flowing into the system. What's particularly interesting about this model is that Costco collects the vendor fee whether or not the product sells. Even if customers taste the food and walk away without buying anything, the vendor has already paid for the promotional slot. In other words, those sample stations function less like a free gift and more like advertising space embedded inside the shopping experience. The warehouse floor becomes a marketplace not only for selling products, but also for selling exposure. What makes this business model particularly interesting is that vendors see it as one of the most efficient forms of marketing available. Traditional advertising, television commercials, online ads, or billboards requires brands to spend enormous sums of money just to capture a few seconds of attention. With sampling, the brand skips that entire process and delivers the product directly to the consumer's mouth. It is the ultimate product demonstration. Vendors know that if a shopper tastes something and enjoys it, the chances of a purchase increase dramatically. That is why many food manufacturers compete for these sampling slots inside Costco warehouses. From their perspective, the sampling station is not just a table handing out food. It is a highly targeted marketing platform reaching customers who are already inside the store and ready to buy. Number 2. The company running the sample army. Another detail most shoppers rarely notice is that the people handing out the samples usually are not Costco employees at all. Instead, most sampling operations are handled by a separate company called Club Demonstration Services, or CDS. CDS specializes in running product demonstrations inside large retail environments. They recruit workers, coordinate with vendors, prepare the food, and manage the logistics of distributing samples throughout the store. Across the United States and other markets where Costco operates, CDS employs thousands of workers who are deployed inside warehouses every day. Their job is not just to hand out food. It is to actively demonstrate the product and spark interest among shoppers passing through the aisles. This arrangement provides several advantages for Costco. The company does not need to hire or manage the staff directly. The vendors pay for the promotion, CDS handles the operations, and Costco benefits from the increased attention that sampling stations bring to particular products. What many shoppers also do not realize is that CDS employees are trained not only in food safety, but also in subtle promotional techniques. While they are not allowed to aggressively sell products, they are often instructed to engage customers with small conversations about the food. A sampler might mention how easy the item is to cook at home, how popular it has been with other shoppers that day, or how it pairs well with other items nearby in the store. These conversations may seem casual, but they serve an important marketing purpose. They help build familiarity and confidence in the product. Even a short interaction can increase the likelihood that a shopper will pick up the item before leaving the warehouse. Number 3. The mind-blowing scale of the sampling machine. When you begin to examine how many samples are distributed across Costco warehouses each day, the sheer scale of the operation becomes astonishing. Workers who run these stations often report handing out up to 1,000 individual samples during a single shift. On busy days, particularly weekends when foot traffic is at its highest, that number can climb even further. Now imagine a warehouse running 10 stations simultaneously. That means one location alone could distribute 10,000 samples in a single day. Multiply that across hundreds of warehouses across North America and around the world, and the numbers quickly reach into the millions of samples every week. But scale is only part of the story. The placement of these stations is not random. Costco strategically positions them in high-traffic areas of the store where shoppers naturally slow down or pause. You will often find them near major aisle intersections, close to newly introduced products, or positioned next to items that vendors want to promote during a particular sales period. The scale becomes even more impressive when you consider the number of products that rotate through the sampling program each year. Costco warehouses regularly introduce new foods, seasonal items, and limited-time products that vendors want customers to try. Sampling allows these new items to gain instant exposure. Instead of sitting unnoticed on a shelf, the product becomes the center of attention for hundreds or even thousands of shoppers in a single day. In many cases, this is the fastest way for a new food brand to break into Costco's highly competitive retail environment. A successful sampling event can transform an unknown product into a bestseller almost overnight. Number 4. The sales explosion vendors are really paying for. For the companies paying for these demonstrations, the ultimate question is simple. Does sampling actually work? The data suggests that it does, and in many cases, very dramatically. Retail marketing studies have shown that products being sampled can experience sales increases of up to 40% on the same day the samples are offered. But the real financial impact often occurs after the demonstration ends. Marketing experts refer to this delayed effect as the halo effect. Even if a shopper does not purchase the product immediately, the tasting experience remains in their memory. Days later, when they see the item again on the shelf, they remember what it tasted like. Another reason vendors value the sampling program is the data it generates. When a product is sampled inside a Costco warehouse, the retailer can track how sales change before, during, and after the demonstration. This gives manufacturers real insight into how consumers respond to the product. If sales increase dramatically after sampling, it confirms that the product resonates with shoppers. If the response is weak, the vendor may adjust the recipe, packaging, or marketing strategy. In this way, sampling becomes both a promotional tool and a form of live market research. Number 5. The psychology behind the free bite. The success of Costco's sampling strategy is not based solely on taste. It also relies heavily on psychological principles that influence how people make decisions. One of the most powerful forces at play is reciprocity, the human tendency to return favors. When someone receives something for free, even something very small, the brain often interprets it as kindness. Subconsciously, we feel a subtle obligation to respond in a positive way. In a retail environment, that response often takes the form of buying the product. Another psychological trigger at work is something known as commitment bias. Once someone stops at a sampling station, they have already made a small commitment of time and attention to the product. They pause their shopping, interact with the sampler, and taste the food. This small act of engagement makes them more likely to consider the product seriously. In behavioral science, even a tiny action can increase the likelihood of a larger follow-up decision. In this case, that decision might be placing the item in the cart. What began as a simple taste becomes the first step in a chain of actions that leads to a purchase. Number 6. The crowd effect that drives more sales. Another subtle but powerful force influencing shopper behavior is the presence of crowds around sampling stations. When people see a group gathered around a table in the store, their brains automatically interpret it as a signal that something interesting is happening there. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as social proof. Retail analysts often note that crowd behavior can change the entire atmosphere of a store. When people gather around a sampling station, it creates a sense of activity and excitement that spreads across the surrounding aisles. Shoppers moving through the warehouse may not initially know what the product is, but the crowd itself draws their attention. This dynamic effect is one of the reasons vendors prefer busy sampling days, such as Fridays and Saturdays. Larger crowds amplify the social proof effect and create a stronger impression that the product is popular. In large retail environments like Costco warehouses, where shoppers are constantly navigating huge aisles and towering product displays, these social signals become extremely powerful. When someone sees 10 or 15 people waiting around a sample table, it immediately creates curiosity. People instinctively wonder what everyone else is trying. That curiosity pulls them toward the station even if they had no prior interest in the product. Over time, this creates a ripple effect across the store. One crowd attracts another, and the product begins to feel like something everyone is talking about. For marketers, this kind of organic attention is incredibly valuable because it makes the product appear naturally popular without needing traditional advertising. Number 7. The smell strategy most people never notice. One of the most fascinating aspects of Costco's sampling program is something many shoppers barely notice: the smell. Hot food releases aromas that travel across the warehouse floor. Food retailers have studied the impact of scent on purchasing behavior for decades. Research shows that pleasant food aromas can increase both browsing time and spending inside a store. When customers smell something delicious, they tend to slow down, explore nearby shelves, and consider food items they might not otherwise have noticed. In a warehouse environment as large as Costco, scent becomes an especially powerful tool. The smell of freshly cooked food can travel surprisingly far across the open floor space, acting almost like a directional guide that leads shoppers toward the sampling station. This strategy is sometimes referred to as scent marketing, and it has been used by restaurants, bakeries, and supermarkets for years. When people smell warm bread, sizzling meat, or freshly baked desserts, the brain automatically begins associating those smells with comfort and satisfaction. That emotional response increases appetite even if the person was not originally hungry. Inside a Costco warehouse, where shoppers often spend long periods walking through aisles, that sudden aroma can feel like an invitation to stop and take a break. The moment they pause for a sample, the marketing process begins. A smell leads to a taste, and the taste often leads to a purchase. Number 8. The FDA Oversight Gap. Food safety in the United States is generally regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. But when it comes to food sampling inside retail environments, oversight becomes less clear. Sampling stations often operate in a regulatory gray area. They are not full restaurants, yet they are also not packaged foods prepared in factories. Some consumer advocates have occasionally raised concerns about how sampling stations are monitored, particularly in extremely busy warehouses where thousands of customers pass through each day. While most stores follow strict hygiene guidelines, including gloves, small serving sizes, and controlled preparation equipment, the responsibility for enforcing those rules often falls on the store itself rather than a centralized federal inspection system. This creates an interesting situation where a massive national sampling program operates largely under local supervision. Individual counties or city health departments may establish their own guidelines for food demonstrations, but those rules can vary widely depending on location. In practice, many of these systems rely heavily on the training and professionalism of the employees running the station. For shoppers, Everything appears orderly and safe, and in most cases it is. However, the scale of these programs raises an important question about transparency. Millions of samples are distributed every week across the country, yet there is surprisingly little public discussion about how such large in-store food preparation programs are monitored at the national level. Number 9. Why seniors are especially affected. Costco's membership base includes millions of older shoppers. For many seniors, free samples have become a familiar and enjoyable part of the shopping routine. But aging changes how the body experiences taste. As people grow older, taste receptors gradually become less sensitive, which often leads people to prefer stronger flavors, particularly foods higher in salt, sugar, or fat. Another factor worth considering is that many seniors shop during daytime hours when warehouses are less crowded. Interestingly, this is also when sampling stations may receive significant attention because shoppers have more time to stop and interact with them. For retirees or older shoppers who enjoy browsing the store at a relaxed pace, the sampling stations can become social touchpoints during the shopping trip. For some older shoppers, these sample stations can even become small moments of conversation during their visit to the warehouse. The interaction with the sampler, the opportunity to try something new, and the relaxed pace of daytime shopping all contribute to the experience. But this also means seniors may encounter and taste more products during a single trip than they initially intended. Over time, repeated exposure to these foods can subtly influence buying habits. A product that might have been ignored on a shelf suddenly becomes familiar because it has been tasted before. That familiarity can make shoppers more comfortable adding the item to their cart, sometimes without realizing that the sample itself played a role in shaping that decision. Costco's free samples may appear simple on the surface, but behind those tiny cups of food lies a sophisticated system involving marketing psychology, vendor partnerships, product demonstrations, and retail strategy. Those samples influence how shoppers move through the store, what they notice, and ultimately what ends up in their cart. Now we want to hear from you. If you found this video informative, type sample in the comments. If you think free samples are just harmless fun and not part of a marketing strategy at all, type free food. And if anything in this video surprised you, tell us what stood out the most. Because sometimes the biggest marketing tricks are hiding in plain sight.